She thought no one saw her manager drag her into the back hallway. But the quiet biker in the corner had been watching all night. What she didn't know, he'd been tracking this man for 8 months, and she just became the key to bringing him down. The sound of shattering plates cut through the dinner rush like a gunshot. Mara froze in the middle of the crowded diner, her hands still extended where the tray had been seconds before. 23 dishes, entrees, sides, drinks, now decorated the floor in a spectacular mess of broken ceramic, spilled gravy, and shattered glass. The entire restaurant went silent. Her heart hammered against her ribs as every customer turned to stare. Heat crawled up her neck and flooded her face. This was her 3rd week at Redding's diner, and she'd just destroyed half the kitchen's evening output. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry." She dropped to her knees, hands trembling as she began gathering the larger pieces. A shard of glass sliced her palm, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was the cost, easily $200 in food and dishes. Money she didn't have. Money her mother's medical bills had already drained from her savings. "Everyone, please, I'll clean this up right away," she said, louder now, fighting back tears. "Your orders will be remade immediately, I promise." The kitchen door exploded open. Manager Garrett Reddington stood in the doorway, his face the color of raw meat. He was a thick man, built like a bull, with graying hair slicked back with too much pomade. His eyes locked onto Mara with an intensity that made her stomach turn over. "You," his voice was low, dangerous. "You incompetent little." He crossed the dining room in 4 heavy strides, his dress shoes crunching over broken glass. Mara scrambled backward instinctively, her bloodied hand leaving a smear on the tile. "Mr. Reddington, I'm sorry, someone bumped into me and... Do you have any idea how much you just cost me?" He loomed over her, blocking out the overhead lights. "That's coming out of your paycheck. All of it. But that's more than I make in 2 weeks. Should have thought about that before you proved you can't handle a simple tray." Tears burned in Mara's eyes, but she blinked them back. She couldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of everyone. She'd learned young that crying only made angry men angrier. A customer cleared his throat. "Hey, buddy, it was an accident. Maybe ease up a little." Reddington's head snapped toward the voice. "This is employee business. I suggest you mind your own." The customer, a middle-aged man in a business suit, raised his hands and looked away. No one else spoke up. In the far corner booth, hidden partially behind a support column, a man sat alone. He wore a worn leather jacket despite the summer heat, and his dark hair fell past his collar. A half-eaten burger sat untouched on his plate. He'd been sitting there for over an hour, nursing the same cup of coffee, barely moving. Now his gray eyes were fixed on Reddington with an intensity that could cut steel. Reddington grabbed Mara's wrist and yanked her to her feet. His grip was iron, his fingers digging into the bone hard enough to bruise. "Get up. We're going to have a conversation about your future here." "Mr. Reddington, please, I need this job," Mara's voice cracked. She tried to pull away, but his grip only tightened. "I said get up." He dragged her toward the back of the restaurant, past the shocked diners, past the other waitresses who quickly looked away. Mara stumbled, her shoes skidding on the tile, but Reddington didn't slow down. He hauled her through the swinging kitchen door like she weighed nothing. The 2 cooks stood frozen at their stations, spatulas in hand, but neither moved to help. They knew better. "Everyone get back to work," Reddington barked. "Those orders aren't going to remake themselves." He pulled Mara down the narrow hallway toward the bathrooms at the back of the building. The corridor was dim, lit by a single flickering bulb. The sounds of the kitchen faded behind them. Panic seized Mara's chest. "Where are we going?" "Mr. Reddington, you're hurting me." "Shut up," he shoved open the door marked, "Staff Only," and dragged her into the cramped space that served as a storage area for cleaning supplies. The small bathroom was attached through another door on the far wall. "Please, I'll work double shifts, I'll cover the cost, just don't." The door to the hallway swung open behind them. A figure filled the doorway. The man from the corner booth. Up close, he was taller than he'd seemed sitting down, easily 6'2", with broad shoulders and hands scarred from old fights. His leather jacket hung open over a faded gray t-shirt. His face was hard, weathered, but his eyes were calm. Dangerously calm. "Let her go," he said quietly. Reddington spun around, still gripping Mara's wrist. "Who the hell are you? This is a private area. Get back to your table before I call the cops." The man didn't move. Didn't blink. "I said let her go." For a moment, the three of them stood frozen in the dim hallway. Mara could feel Reddington's pulse through his grip on her wrist, fast, angry. Could smell his cologne mixed with sweat. The biker took one step forward. Something flickered across Reddington's face. Not fear, exactly. But recognition. An instinct that told him this wasn't a fight he wanted. He released Mara's wrist and held up both hands. "Fine. We're done here anyway." His voice had changed, still angry, but controlled now. "Careful. This is your last warning, girl. One more screw-up and you're gone." He brushed past the biker, deliberately bumping his shoulder, and disappeared down the hallway. Mara sagged against the wall, cradling her wrist. The skin was already darkening where Reddington had grabbed her. Her whole body trembled. The man looked at her, and for a moment, his expression softened. "You okay?" She nodded quickly, not trusting her voice. "That happen a lot?" She didn't answer. Couldn't. If she admitted it, if she said yes, then what? She needed this job. Her mother needed her medications. The rent was due in 8 days. The man studied her face for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Okay." He turned and walked back toward the dining room without another word. Mara stood alone in the dim hallway, her heart still racing, her wrist throbbing. Through the wall, she could hear the normal sounds of the diner resuming, the clatter of dishes, the murmur of conversation, the hiss of the grill. She looked down at her shaking hands. Something had just happened. Something that felt important. But she didn't understand what. She didn't know that the quiet man in the leather jacket had just marked Garrett Reddington. And she definitely didn't know that Reddington had just marked him back. The biker didn't return to his booth. Mara watched from behind the kitchen window as he dropped 2 20s on his table, more than double his bill, and walked toward the exit. His movements were unhurried, deliberate. Like someone who never felt the need to rush because he knew exactly what he was doing. The bell above the door chimed as he left. She released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Girl, you better get back out there," Rosa, the head waitress, whispered beside her. Rosa was 50-something, with tired eyes and a voice roughened by 30 years of cigarettes. Reddington's watching the cameras. Mara glanced up at the black dome in the corner of the ceiling. A red light blinked steadily beneath the tinted glass. "I don't know if I can go back out there," Mara said quietly. "Everyone saw. Everyone's already forgotten." "That's how it works here," Rosa squeezed her shoulder. "Head down, mouth shut, paycheck earned. That's the only way to survive this place." Mara nodded and pushed through the swinging door. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of forced smiles and mumbled apologies. She moved through her section on autopilot, taking orders, delivering food, clearing tables. Her wrist ached with every tray she lifted. Whenever she passed the manager's office, she felt Reddington's eyes tracking her through the glass window. By 9 o'clock, the dinner rush had finally died down. Only a handful of customers remained, scattered across the worn vinyl booths. Mara was wiping down table 7 when Rosa appeared beside her. "Your shift's over. Clock out and go home." "But I'm scheduled until 10. Reddington wants you gone. Doesn't want to look at you anymore tonight." Rosa's voice dropped. "Take the mercy, honey. Go." Mara didn't argue. She untied her apron in the break room, grabbed her jacket from the hook, and slipped out the back entrance into the parking lot. The summer night air was thick and warm. Crickets sang in the overgrown weeds along the fence line. Mara's rust-spotted Honda sat alone under a broken streetlight at the far edge of the lot. She was halfway to her car when she heard the footsteps behind her. Heavy. Purposeful. Male. Her heart jumped into her throat. She walked faster, digging in her jacket pocket for her keys. The footsteps matched her pace. "Mara." Reddington's voice. She spun around. He stood 15 feet away, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his tie loosened. His face was unreadable in the shadows. "I'm sorry about tonight," she said quickly. "It won't happen again, I promise." "Who was he?" "What?" "That biker." "Who was he to you?" "Nobody. I'd never seen him before." Reddington took 3 steps closer. "You sure about that?" "Because it looked like he knew exactly when to show up. Like maybe you signaled him somehow." "I didn't. I don't even know his name." "I don't like coincidences, Mara." His voice was soft now, which somehow made it worse. "I don't like people interfering with how I run my business. And I really don't like customers who think they're heroes." He was just trying to help." "Help?" Reddington smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You think you needed help from me?" "I was just going to have a conversation with you." Maybe I raised my voice a little. "But that's between an employer and employee. It's private." Mara's keys bit into her palm. "I understand. Do you?" He looked past her, scanning the parking lot. "Because if that guy shows up here again, if he starts asking questions, if he becomes a problem. Well, I need to know you're not going to say anything that might give him the wrong idea about this place." "I won't say anything." "Good girl." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Give me your number." "My." "What?" "Your phone number. In case I need to reach you about shift changes or scheduling." "Standard procedure." It wasn't standard procedure. In 3 weeks, he'd never asked for anyone's number. But Mara's hands were shaking too badly to argue. She recited the digits, and he typed them into his phone. A second later, her own phone buzzed in her pocket. "There," Reddington said. "Now we can stay in touch." He turned and walked back toward the diner, then paused at the door. "Get some rest, Mara. And don't be late tomorrow. We're short-staffed." He disappeared inside. Mara stood frozen in the parking lot, her heart hammering. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. One new message from an unknown number: "Keep quiet about tonight." She stared at the words until they blurred. What she didn't see was the motorcycle parked across the street, hidden in the shadow of a closed gas station. The rider sat motionless, watching through the fence. The man they would come to know as Hawk had seen everything. And he'd just added another page to Garrett Reddington's file. The Starlight Motel sat on the eastern edge of town, the kind of place where the neon sign flickered more than it glowed and nobody asked questions as long as you paid in cash. Room 12 was at the far end, tucked away from the road and the manager's office. Hawk pushed open the door and locked it behind him. The room smelled like old carpet and industrial cleaner. He didn't bother turning on the overhead light, just clicked on the desk lamp, casting everything in amber shadows. He shrugged off his leather jacket and tossed it over the chair, then pulled a beer from the mini fridge. It was warm. The fridge had stopped working 2 days ago, and he hadn't bothered reporting it. He wasn't planning to stay much longer anyway. The wall above the desk told a different story than the dingy motel room suggested. Photographs covered nearly every inch of space, connected by strips of red yarn that formed a web of connections. Printouts of news articles. Handwritten notes on yellow legal paper. Maps with locations circled in marker. At the center of it all, a driver's license photo of Garrett Reddington, blown up to 8 by 10. His smug face stared out from the wall like a spider at the center of its web. Hawk set down his beer and pulled out his phone, scrolling to the photos he'd taken tonight. Reddington dragging Mara down the hallway. Reddington cornering her in the parking lot. The text message exchange, he'd positioned himself close enough to catch the reflection on Mara's face when she read those words. Keep quiet about tonight. Classic intimidation. Small scale, but effective. He connected his phone to the laptop on the desk and transferred the files, then added them to a folder labeled Redding's Diner. Current, the folder already contained 43 items. Hawk took a long drink and studied the wall. The first photograph was a missing persons flyer from 18 months ago. Jessica Tanner, 19, last seen leaving work. Below her smiling graduation photo, a description, waitress at Pete's Roadhouse in Millbrook, 2 towns over. Disappeared after a closing shift. No body ever found. Next to it, Caroline Voss, 24. A bartender from Harlow County. Vanished 3 months after Jessica. Her car was found in the employee parking lot, keys still in the ignition, purse on the passenger seat. She'd worked at a sports bar. Both establishments shared one thing in common. Garrett Reddington had been employed as assistant manager at Pete's Roadhouse, then moved to Harlow County a month before Caroline disappeared. Hawk had found 7 more. 7 young women, all service workers, all vanished from their jobs within 6 months of Reddington taking a management position. The pattern was there if you knew how to look for it, spread across 4 counties and 3 years. But patterns weren't evidence. Not the kind that would hold up in court. He pulled up a document on his laptop, a timeline he'd been building for 8 months. He added tonight's date and typed, subject exhibited aggressive behavior toward new employee, M. Chen, 22. Physical contact, grabbed wrist, dragged to isolated area. Witnessed intimidation in parking lot. Subject aware of observer presence. Possible acceleration of timeline. That last part worried him. In every previous case, Reddington had taken his time. Months of small escalations. Testing boundaries. Breaking down resistance. By the time the women disappeared, they were already isolated, cut off from friends, behind on rent, desperate enough to trust the wrong person offering help. But tonight, Reddington had moved fast. Too fast. Because Hawk had interfered. He stood and walked to the window, pulling back the stained curtain to look at the empty parking lot. His Harley sat alone under a dying streetlight. 8 months ago, Hawk had been a different person with a different name. He'd been Detective Michael Hawkins, working homicide in the city, 3 hours north. He'd caught the Caroline Voss case when her body finally washed up near a construction site. The autopsy revealed she'd been dead for weeks, 'cause of death, blunt force trauma. But what stuck with him was the toxicology report. A cocktail of drugs in her system, sedatives, painkillers, and evidence of prolonged abuse. This wasn't a random killing. It was the end of something much worse. He'd started digging. Found Jessica Tanner's case. Then 2 more. Then 3 more. And every thread led back to restaurants with a recent management change. Every thread led back to Garrett Reddington. When Hawk brought his findings to his lieutenant, he'd been told to drop it. Circumstantial evidence across multiple jurisdictions. No proof Reddington was involved. No DA would touch it. So he'd quit. Turned in his badge, cashed out his pension, and started following Reddington full-time. No rules. No politics. Just the hunt. Now, looking at Mara's frightened face in the photographs, he felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just become bait in a trap Hawk had been setting for months. He pulled out a burner phone and sent a text to his only remaining contact in law enforcement, subject showing aggression. Timeline may be accelerating. Maintaining surveillance. The response came 30 seconds later, be careful. You're not a cop anymore. Hawk deleted both messages and tossed the phone on the bed. He didn't need to be a cop. He just needed to be close enough to stop what came next. Mara's alarm screamed at 6 a.m., dragging her from a nightmare she couldn't quite remember. Something about hallways. About running. About hands grabbing her in the dark. She slapped the alarm off and lay staring at the water-stained ceiling of her studio apartment. Her wrist throbbed, the bruises had bloomed overnight into ugly purple-black fingerprints. She could count each one. 5 fingers. Reddington's hand, printed on her skin like evidence. Evidence of what, though? That her boss had grabbed her? That he'd been angry? No law against that. No protection for waitresses who couldn't keep their trays steady. Her phone sat on the milk crate she used as a nightstand. She picked it up, dreading what she might find. One new message, received at 4:47 a.m., morning shift. Be there by 8. Don't be late. From the same unknown number. From Reddington. Her stomach twisted. She wasn't scheduled for morning shift. She worked evenings, always had. But arguing meant risking the job, and risking the job meant. She looked at the collection of orange pill bottles lined up on her kitchenette counter. Her mother's medications. The expensive ones insurance wouldn't cover. $260 every month, like clockwork. Plus rent. Plus utilities. Plus food. Mara dragged herself out of bed and stumbled to the tiny bathroom. The shower ran cold for the first 5 minutes, it always did, but she stood under the spray anyway, hoping it would wake her up. Wash away the fear that had settled into her bones. It didn't work. By 7:30, she was dressed in her work uniform, black pants, white button-down shirt, non-slip shoes. She'd covered the bruises on her wrist with a long-sleeve cardigan despite the summer heat. In the cracked mirror by the door, she looked pale. Exhausted. Like someone who'd aged 5 years overnight. The drive to Redding's diner took 15 minutes. She pulled into the parking lot at 7:55, 5 minutes early. Only 3 other cars sat in the lot, Rosa's beat-up Chevy, one of the cook's trucks, and Reddington's black Cadillac. The diner didn't open until 8:30. The front door was locked. Mara walked around back to the employee entrance, her heart hammering. The door swung open before she could reach for the handle. Reddington stood in the doorway, already dressed in his usual manager's uniform, pressed shirt, tie, slacks. He looked well rested. Calm. Right on time, he said. Good girl. She slipped past him without meeting his eyes. The kitchen was quiet, just the hum of the industrial refrigerators and the soft clatter of Rosa prepping coffee stations. The older woman glanced up when Mara entered, and something flickered across her face. Pity, maybe. Or recognition. Didn't know you were working mornings now, Rosa said carefully. Last-minute schedule change. Rosa turned back to her work, but the set of her shoulders was tense. Reddington appeared in the kitchen doorway. Mara, I need you to do inventory in the storage room before we open. Full count, everything in the dry goods section. List is on the clipboard. The storage room? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Problem with that? No, sir. Good. Rosa will cover the floor until you're done, he smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. Take your time. Be thorough. The storage room was at the back of the building, past the bathrooms, connected to the same hallway where the biker had found them last night. It was cramped and poorly lit, lined with metal shelving units stacked high with industrial-sized cans and boxes of supplies. Mara found the clipboard hanging by the door. The inventory list was 2 pages long. She stepped inside, and the door swung shut behind her with a soft click. The silence was immediate and oppressive. No kitchen sounds reached here. No voices. Just the electrical hum of the building and her own breathing. She started counting: cans of tomato sauce, bags of flour, boxes of pasta, checking items off the list with trembling hands. Every few seconds, she glanced at the door, waiting for it to open. Waiting for Reddington to appear. 40 minutes passed. Then an hour. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She nearly dropped the clipboard. For a moment, she just stared at her pocket, afraid to look. But finally, she pulled out the phone. Unknown number. Not Reddington's. She'd saved his number last night just so she'd know when he was contacting her. This was someone else. She opened the message: "If anything feels wrong, don't go anywhere alone." Not with him. Mara's hand started shaking so badly she had to set down the clipboard. Who was this? How did they have her number? How did they know? A sound in the hallway outside. Footsteps. She shoved the phone back in her pocket and grabbed the clipboard, forcing her hands steady. The door opened. Rosa stood in the doorway, her face carefully neutral. "You doing okay back here?" "Fine. Almost done with the count." "Mara," Rosa's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Whatever's going on with Reddington, be smart about it. I've seen this before." "Seen what before?" But Rosa just shook her head and left, pulling the door closed behind her. Mara stood alone in the storage room, surrounded by shadows and canned goods, holding a message from a stranger who somehow knew she was in danger. The question was, did she believe it? Garrett Reddington sat in his office, door locked, blinds drawn. 3 computer monitors glowed in the darkness, each displaying a different camera feed from the restaurant's security system. Kitchen. Dining room. Back hallway. And the storage room, where Mara had been counting inventory for the past 90 minutes. He rewound the footage from last night for the 6th time, fingers drumming on the desk. The timestamp read 8:47 p.m. There, Mara dropping the tray. The crash. Him crossing the floor. Grabbing her wrist. Normal boss behavior. Justified response to incompetence. But then, the biker. Reddington paused the footage on a single frame. The man stood in the back hallway, face partially shadowed but visible enough. Late 30s, maybe 40. Strong build. Leather jacket. The kind of guy who looked like he'd been in fights and won most of them. But it wasn't the physical presence that bothered Reddington. It was the eyes. Even in the grainy security footage, even with the poor lighting, those eyes were calculating. Alert. The eyes of someone who saw more than he should. Someone trained to observe. Reddington zoomed in on the frame, pixelating the image until it was barely recognizable. He'd already run the screenshot through every reverse image search he could find. Nothing. No social media profiles. No arrest records. No news articles. The guy was a ghost. That meant either he was nobody, just some random good Samaritan with bad timing, or he was very carefully staying off the radar. Reddington didn't believe in random. He picked up his phone and pulled up a contact saved only as D. His thumb hovered over the call button for a long moment before he pressed it. 3 rings. Then a voice, rough as gravel. "It's early. We have a problem." Silence on the other end. Then, what kind of problem? "Someone's watching. Customer last night. Interfered when I was handling an employee situation." That it? Some hero with a conscience? Maybe. Or maybe something else. Reddington switched monitors, pulling up a wider shot of the dining room. He sat in the corner for over an hour before anything happened. Barely touched his food. Just watched. Could be nothing. Could be. But I need to know for sure. Reddington leaned back in his chair. The new girl, Mara Chen. She's skittish. Vulnerable. She fits the profile perfectly, but if someone's already noticed her, if someone's paying attention. You want to cut her loose? I want you to send Marcus and Tony. Another pause. Longer this time. You sure that's necessary? Drawing in extra people means more exposure. I need eyes I can trust. Local hire-ons aren't going to cut it if this goes sideways. Reddington rubbed his temple, feeling the beginning of a headache forming. Tell them to come in as corporate. Say we're doing inventory audits, checking for theft. Give them legitimate cover. When? Today. This afternoon. I want them here before the evening shift. You're spooked. I'm careful, Reddington snapped. There's a difference. We've run this operation for 3 years without a single problem because I'm careful. Because I don't take chances. All right. They'll be there by 3 inch. The voice on the other end shifted, became harder. But Garrett? If this is nothing, if you're just paranoid about some random biker, we're going to have a conversation about your decision-making. The line went dead. Reddington set down the phone and turned back to the monitors. On screen 3, Mara had finally finished her inventory. She was walking toward the door, clipboard in hand, shoulders hunched like she was trying to make herself smaller. Poor thing. She really was perfect for what they needed. Young enough to be moldable. Desperate enough to tolerate mistreatment. Isolated enough that nobody would immediately notice if she disappeared. Her mother was in a nursing home, early onset Alzheimer's, according to the background check Reddington had run before hiring her. No siblings. No boyfriend. No real friends to speak of. She was a ghost waiting to happen. But timing was everything. Reddington pulled up his personal phone and scrolled to Mara's number. He typed out a message, "Good work on inventory. You can take your lunch break now. Be back by 1 p.m. He watched on the monitor as she pulled out her phone in the hallway, read the message, and quickly typed a response, "Thank you, Mr. Reddington." Obedient. Compliant. Exactly what he needed. Girls who'd worked at Redding's diner and left without notice. No forwarding address. No final paychecks picked up. Just gone. The official story was they'd quit. Found better jobs, moved away, stopped showing up. The reality was considerably different. Reddington closed the files and stood, straightening his tie in the reflection of the dark monitor. He had 4 hours before Marcus and Tony arrived. 4 hours to make sure everything looked clean. Professional. Normal. Because if that biker came back, if he started asking questions, Reddington needed plausible deniability. And he needed Mara too afraid to talk. He unlocked his office door and stepped out into the bright fluorescent light of the kitchen, his expression smoothing into the pleasant mask of a concerned manager. Just another day at Redding's diner. Just another girl who didn't know she was already marked. Mara sat in her Honda in the diner parking lot, engine running, air conditioning blasting. Her lunch break was only 30 minutes, but she couldn't bring herself to go inside anywhere. Couldn't face more people, more questions, more conversation. She pulled out her phone and reread the message from the unknown number, "If anything feels wrong, don't go anywhere alone." Not with him. Who had sent this? The biker from last night? But how would he have gotten her number? Unless he'd been there. In the parking lot. Watching when Reddington. A knock on her window made her jump so hard she hit her head on the roof. The biker stood outside her car. In the daylight, he looked different. Less intimidating, somehow. His leather jacket was gone, replaced by a plain gray t-shirt. His dark hair was tied back. Without the dramatic lighting and tension of last night, he could have been anyone, a mechanic, a construction worker, just another tired person trying to make it through the day. But his eyes were the same. Sharp. Aware. Mara's hand moved instinctively toward the door lock, but it was already engaged. She'd locked it the moment she got in the car, old habit from her mother's warnings about parking lots. The man held up both hands, showing empty palms. Not threatening. Just there. He pointed at the window and made a rolling motion. Every instinct screamed at her to start the car and drive away. Instead, against all better judgment, she lowered the window 2 inches. "I don't want any trouble," she said quickly. "Neither do I." His voice was calm, quiet. The kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. "I just want to talk for a minute." "That okay?" "About what?" "About last night. About your boss." "I don't know you." "That's fair." He glanced around the parking lot, checking for cameras, Mara realized. Checking for witnesses. "My name's Hawk. I was the guy in the diner. The one who—" "I remember." She gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Did you send me that text message?" He nodded once. "How did you get my number?" "I was in the parking lot last night. I saw your boss corner you." "Saw him make you give him your number?" Hawk's expression didn't change, but something hard flickered in his eyes. "I wrote down your plate number, ran it through a contact. Found your information." "I know how that sounds. It sounds like stalking." "It does." "You're right." He didn't apologize, didn't make excuses. "But I need you to listen to me for 1 minute. After that, if you want me gone, I'm gone. You'll never see me again." Mara's finger hovered over the window button, ready to seal herself back in the safety of the car. But something in his voice, not desperation, not manipulation, just honesty, made her pause. "1 minute," she said. "Your boss, Garrett Reddington. How long have you worked for him?" 3 weeks. "Has he ever made you uncomfortable? Asked you to work late alone? Assigned you tasks in isolated areas? The storage room. The morning inventory. The way he watched her on the cameras. Why are you asking me this?" "Because I think you're in danger." Hawk said it plainly, like he was commenting on the weather. "I think Reddington is dangerous. And I think he's focused on you." "That's insane. He's just a restaurant manager." "He's an asshole, sure, but—" 3 years ago, a girl named Jessica Tanner disappeared from a restaurant 2 towns over. Reddington was assistant manager there. 18 months ago, Caroline Voss vanished from a bar in Harlow County. Reddington had just been hired. He kept his voice level, factual. "There are 7 more. All young women. All service workers. All employed at places where Reddington worked." Mara felt ice spreading through her chest. "You're saying he—" "What?" "Killed them?" "I'm saying they disappeared. And I'm saying you match a pattern. This is crazy." "You're crazy," but even as she said it, she thought about Rosa's warning. "I've seen this before." About the way Reddington looked at her. About the text message at 4:47 a.m. Hawk pulled something from his pocket, a business card, plain white with just a phone number printed on it. He slid it through the gap in the window. It fell onto her lap. "I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm not asking you to do anything except be careful." He stepped back from the car. "If you feel threatened, if something feels wrong, if he tries to isolate you, call that number. Day or night. I'll answer." "Who are you? Are you a cop?" "Not anymore." "Then why do you care?" For the first time, something changed in his expression. Not quite emotion, but a shadow of it. Because 7 girls didn't get a warning. I'm making sure you do. He turned and walked away, heading toward a Harley-Davidson parked 3 spaces over. He didn't look back. Didn't wait for her response. Mara sat frozen in her car, the business card burning in her lap like a hot coal. She should throw it away. Should tell Reddington someone was harassing her. Should call the police and report this strange man following her. Instead, she saved the number in her phone under a single letter, H. Just in case. Because deep down, underneath the denial and fear, a small voice whispered that Hawk was right. Something was very wrong at Redding's diner. And she was running out of time to figure out what. 2 days passed in a fog of anxiety. Mara worked her shifts, kept her head down, and jumped every time Reddington spoke to her. The bruises on her wrist had faded to a sickly yellow-green, but she still wore long sleeves. She checked her phone obsessively, expecting another message from Reddington, another early morning summons, another test she couldn't afford to fail. But nothing came. He was almost normal. Polite, even. He'd asked how her mother was doing. Complimented her on a well-balanced tray. It made her more nervous than his anger had. Thursday afternoon, she arrived for her 4 o'clock shift to find Rosa standing outside the back in trance, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. "You okay?" Mara asked. Rosa took a long drag and exhaled slowly. "Suits showed up an hour ago. 2 of them. Reddington says they're from corporate, here to do inventory audits. We don't have a corporate office. This place is independently owned." "I know that." "You know that." Rosa dropped the cigarette and crushed it under her shoe. "But apparently, we've got corporate now." Mara's stomach tightened. She thought about Hawk's warning. If he tries to isolate you. What do they look like? Big. Both of them. One's got a scar through his eyebrow. Other one hasn't smiled once since he walked in. Rosa met her eyes. "They're not accountants, honey. I don't know what they are, but they're not here to count cans." Inside, the diner had a different energy. The usual pre-dinner lull felt tense, compressed. The 2 cooks moved around the kitchen quickly and quietly, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Mara tied on her apron and glanced toward the dining room. 2 men sat in a corner booth with Reddington. Rosa had described them perfectly. Both were built like bouncers, wearing cheap suits that didn't quite fit right. The one with the scar kept glancing around the restaurant with predator's eyes, cataloging exits and angles. The other one was looking directly at her. She turned away quickly and busied herself with rolling silverware. Mara, Reddington's voice behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. "Come meet our guests." It wasn't a request. She followed him to the booth, her heart hammering. Up close, the 2 men were even more intimidating. The scarred one had hands like concrete blocks, scarred knuckles that told stories of violence. The other wore glasses that made him look almost intellectual, except for the cold calculation in his eyes. "Mara, this is Marcus and Tony. They're here from our parent company to review operations." Reddington's smile was all teeth. "They'll be observing for the next few days, maybe a week. Just act natural, do your job well, and everything will be fine." Marcus, the one with glasses, extended his hand. "Pleasure." She shook it briefly. His grip was firm, testing. "Nice to meet you. How long have you worked here?" Tony asked, the one with the scar. 3 weeks. Liking it so far? It's fine. Good. Good, Tony smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Garrett runs a tight ship. We're lucky to have managers like him in the organization." The conversation felt scripted. Wrong. Like they were all reading lines from a play only Reddington had rehearsed. Well, I should get back to work, Mara said. Of course. Don't let us keep you, Reddington waved her away. She retreated to the kitchen, her skin crawling. Through the serving window, she could see the three men talking in low voices, glancing occasionally in her direction. Rosa appeared beside her. They asked about you specifically. Before you got here. Wanted to know if you were reliable, if you showed up on time, if you caused problems. What did you tell them? That you're quiet and do your work. Rosa's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Mara, whatever's happening here, you need to be smart. Those men aren't here for inventory. Then what are they here for? Rosa just shook her head and walked away. The evening shift crawled by. Mara felt eyes on her constantly, Reddington from his office, Marcus and Tony from their booth. They ordered coffee and pie but barely touched either, just sat and watched. At 7 o'clock, she stepped outside for her break. The sun was setting, painting the parking lot in orange and purple shadows. She pulled out her phone, fingers hovering over the contact labeled H. Should she call? Tell him about the two men? But what would she even say? That her boss had visitors? That wasn't a crime. A motorcycle engine rumbled to life across the street. Mara looked up sharply. There, parked outside a closed gas station, was Hawk's Harley. He sat astride it, helmet on, but she could feel his gaze even from this distance. He'd been watching. Still watching. The back door opened behind her. Tony stepped out, pulling a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. Nice evening, he said casually. Yeah. He lit his cigarette and took a drag, studying her. You seem nervous. Everything okay? Just tired. He blew smoke toward the sky. Reddington says you've got potential. Says you're the kind of employee who takes direction well. That's good. We need people like that. I just try to do my job. That's all anyone can ask. He flicked ash onto the pavement. You got family around here? The question felt like a trap. My mom. That's nice. Close with her? She's sick. In a care facility. Sorry to hear that. He didn't sound sorry. Must be expensive. I manage. I bet you do. Tony took another drag, his eyes never leaving her face. Jobs like this, they're important when you got bills to pay. Can't afford to lose them over something stupid. You understand what I'm saying? Mara nodded, her throat tight. Good girl. He dropped the cigarette and crushed it. Break's over. Time to get back to work. He held the door open, waiting. Mara glanced across the street one more time. The Harley was still there, engine idling. Then she walked back inside, feeling the door close behind her like a cell locking. The shift should have ended at midnight, but Reddington kept finding reasons to make Mara stay. Storage room needs organizing. Boxes came in this afternoon and the delivery guys just stacked them anywhere. By 12:30, Rosa and the other waitress had clocked out. One cook remained in the kitchen, cleaning the grill with headphones in. Marcus and Tony had left around 11, but their presence still hung in the air like smoke. Mara stood in the storage room doorway, looking at the maze of cardboard boxes and supplies. The overhead light flickered, it always did, casting unstable shadows across the metal shelving. I'll need at least an hour, she told Reddington. Take your time. Do it right. He checked his watch. I've got paperwork to finish anyway. Just lock up when you're done. You remember the code for the back door? She nodded. He'd given it to her last week. At the time, she'd thought it meant he trusted her. Now she wondered if it meant something else entirely. Reddington disappeared toward his office, leaving her alone with the hum of refrigerators and the distant clatter of the cook closing down the kitchen. Mara began sorting boxes, checking labels, stacking them according to category. Canned goods. Dry pasta. Industrial-sized containers of sauce. Her mind wandered as her hands worked automatically, thinking about Marcus and Tony, about their questions, about the way Tony had asked if she could afford to lose this job. About Hawk sitting across the street on his motorcycle, watching. She was moving a heavy box of tomato cans when she noticed something wedged behind the bottom shelf, a dark leather corner, barely visible. She set down the box and knelt, reaching into the gap. Her fingers closed around something rectangular. A ledger, old-fashioned, the kind with actual pages instead of digital records. It was stuck. She pulled harder, and it came free with a shower of dust. The leather was worn, the binding cracked. She opened it, expecting inventory records or supply orders. What she found made her blood go cold. Names. Columns of names with dates beside them. Some she recognized, former employees who'd quit without notice. Jessica. Caroline. Others she didn't know. Next to each name, a series of numbers. Amounts. Payments. She flipped through pages, her hands trembling. More names. More numbers. Then a section labeled only as contacts with phone numbers and abbreviated locations. D, Cincinnati, M, Detroit, R, Columbus. The handwriting was Reddington's. She recognized it from schedule changes he posted in the break room. Near the back of the ledger, entries from the past 3 months. Her breath caught. There, in fresh ink, Mara Chen. Started June 15th. Assessment, compliant. Isolated. Suitable. Beneath it, a notation dated 2 days ago, timeline accelerated. M+T on site for evaluation. Proceed with standard protocol pending final approval. Mara's vision blurred. She flipped back through the pages, looking at the other names, the other girls. Next to each one, eventually, a final entry, transferred or delivered with a date and a dollar amount. Thousands of dollars. These weren't employees who'd quit. They were merchandise. A sound in the hallway, footsteps, coming closer. Mara's heart exploded into panic. She shoved the ledger back into the gap behind the shelf, but it wouldn't fit, wouldn't slide back the way it had come out. The footsteps were getting closer. She pushed harder, and the ledger finally disappeared into the darkness just as the storage room door swung open. She spun around, grabbing a random box. Marcus stood in the doorway, his glasses reflecting the flickering fluorescent light. Thought you'd be done by now. Almost, her voice came out steady, which surprised her. Just a few more boxes. He walked into the room, moving slowly, looking at the shelves. Looking at her. You find everything you need? Yes, sir. Sir, he smiled slightly. Polite. Reddington said you were polite. He moved closer, blocking her path to the door. Mara's pulse hammered in her ears. She clutched the box like a shield. This is a good job, Marcus said conversationally. Steady pay. Reliable. Girls like you need stability, right? With your mom's medical bills and all. How do you know about? We do our research. Part of the evaluation process, he picked up a can of tomatoes from a nearby shelf, examined it, set it down. Tony and I, we travel a lot. Visit different locations. Check on operations. Make sure everyone's cooperating. The way he said cooperating made her stomach turn. Some girls, he continued, they don't understand how good they have it. They ask questions. 'Cause problems make things difficult for everyone. He looked at her directly. You're not going to make things difficult, are you, Mara? No. Good. Because girls who make things difficult, they tend to disappear. Find better opportunities elsewhere. You understand? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Excellent. Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. Finish up here. Reddington wants to talk to you before you leave tonight. He walked out, leaving the door open. Mara stood frozen among the boxes and cans, the fluorescent light flickering above her, her mind racing. The ledger was still hidden behind the shelf. Evidence of something terrible. Evidence she couldn't report without putting herself in immediate danger. Because Marcus was right, girls who caused problems disappeared. And she just found proof that she was next. Mara didn't finish organizing the storage room. She grabbed her jacket, clocked out, and walked straight to her car without stopping by Reddington's office. Let him be angry. Let him fire her. Staying in that building one more second felt like suicide. Her hands shook so badly she could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine turned over on the third try, and she pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. She made it 2 blocks before she had to pull over. Her whole body was trembling, breath coming in short gasps. Panic attack. She'd had them before, after her father died, but never like this. Never with the certain knowledge that she was being hunted. Mara Chen. Assessment, compliant. Isolated. Suitable. 7 other names. 7 other girls who'd been assessed the same way. 7 girls who'd been transferred. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and scrolled to the contact labeled H. Her thumb hovered over the call button. What would she even say? That she'd found a ledger? That her boss was involved in something criminal? Hawk had said he wasn't a cop anymore. What could he actually do? But he'd known. He'd warned her. He'd said 7 girls had disappeared. She pressed call. 1 ring. 2. It's Hawk. His voice was alert, awake, despite the late hour. It's Mara. From the diner. You said I could call if. Are you safe? Where are you? I'm in my car. 2 blocks from work. I found something. Something bad. Did anyone see you find it? I don't think so. But Marcus, one of the men who came today, he came into the storage room right after. I think he knew. I think he was checking. Listen to me carefully. Hawk's voice was calm, grounding. Do not go home. Do you understand? If they think you found something, they'll be watching your apartment. Where am I supposed to go? There's a coffee shop on Brennan Street. The Night Owl. 24 hours. It's public, lots of cameras, always crowded. Go there. I'll meet you in 15 minutes. How do you know I'm not leading you into a trap? I don't. But you called me, which means you're scared enough to take the risk. He paused. I'm taking the same risk. 15 minutes. The line went dead. Mara sat in her car for a long moment, then pulled back onto the road. The Night Owl was 10 minutes away. She kept checking her rearview mirror, looking for headlights that stayed too close, cars that made the same turns. But the streets were mostly empty at 1 in the morning. The coffee shop glowed like a beacon on the corner of Brennan and 5th. Through the windows, she could see a handful of people, college students with laptops, a couple of insomniacs nursing mugs, a waitress wiping down tables. Mara parked under a streetlight and went inside. The place smelled like espresso and vanilla. She ordered a tea she didn't want and sat in a booth facing the door, her back to the wall. Her phone said 1:17 a.m. She wrapped her hands around the cup, trying to stop the shaking. At 1:23, Hawk walked in. He scanned the room in one practiced sweep, noting exits and customers, before his eyes found hers. He ordered black coffee and slid into the booth across from her. You weren't followed, he said. It wasn't a question. I don't think so. Tell me what you found. She told him everything. The ledger. The names. The notations next to her own name. Marcus's veiled threats. The way Reddington had been watching her since the first night. Hawk listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "This is good," he finally said. "Good? Did you hear what I just—" "It's evidence. Real, physical evidence. Everything I've had so far has been circumstantial. Patterns. Suspicions. Nothing that would hold up in court." He leaned forward slightly. "Can you get that ledger? Are you insane? Marcus practically told me they'd kill me if I caused problems." "I know. And that's why we need to move fast." Hawk pulled out his phone and opened a photo. "This is Detective Sarah Chen. She's with the State Police, Task Force on Human Trafficking. She's the only cop I still trust." The photo showed an Asian woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and serious. "I've been feeding her information for months, but she can't move without hard evidence. That ledger is everything we need. Names. Dates. Money trails. It connects Reddington to all of it. So call her. Tell her about it. She can get a warrant. By the time a warrant comes through, that ledger will be gone. Reddington's paranoid. You said Marcus came into the storage room right after you found it. If he had any suspicion you saw something, Reddington will move it tonight." Mara felt sick. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we have maybe a 6-hour window before that evidence disappears forever. And with it, any chance of stopping what happened to Jessica and Caroline and 5 other girls from happening to you. You want me to go back there? Tonight? Not alone. I'll be with you." "That's crazy. The place is locked. There are cameras. You have the door code." "I know how to avoid cameras." Hawk's gray eyes were steady, honest. "I won't lie to you, Mara. This is dangerous. If we get caught, it's over. But if we don't try, you're next on that list. And after you, there'll be another girl. And another." Mara thought about the names in the ledger. Jessica. Caroline. Girls who'd been isolated, terrified, compliant. Girls who'd been suitable. "If I do this," she said slowly, "if we get that ledger and you give it to this detective, she can stop them? All of them?" "Yes. Promise me." "I promise." Mara took a shaky breath and nodded. "Okay. Let's go get it." The diner was dark when they arrived at 2:30 a.m. Hawk parked his motorcycle 2 streets over, and they approached on foot, keeping to the shadows. Mara's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "Cameras are here, here, and here." Hawk pointed to 3 locations. "They cover the parking lot and main entrance, but there's a blind spot along the east wall. That's where we'll enter. The back door code only works from outside. Once we're in, we can't use it to get out without setting off the alarm. We'll go out the front. I can pick that lock in under 30 seconds, he glanced at her. "You sure about this?" No. She wasn't sure about anything. But she nodded anyway. They moved along the building's edge, staying low. Hawk's movements were efficient, practiced, the way someone moved when they'd done this before. At the back door, Mara punched in the code with trembling fingers, 4-7-9-2-#. The lock clicked. The door opened. They slipped inside into darkness. Hawk pulled out a small flashlight, keeping the beam low. The kitchen was eerily silent, all the equipment shut down for the night. Shadows loomed where industrial ovens and refrigerators stood like sleeping giants. "Storage room," Mara whispered, leading him down the back hallway. She pushed open the storage room door. The flickering fluorescent light was off, leaving everything in darkness. Hawk's flashlight cut through the black, illuminating rows of metal shelves and stacked boxes. "Where?" he asked. "Bottom shelf. Back corner. Behind those cans." They moved quickly, quietly. Mara knelt and reached into the gap where she'd found the ledger hours before. Her fingers searched the darkness, finding only dust and metal. Nothing. It's gone, she breathed. You sure this is the right spot? Yes, I'm sure. It was right here. Panic rose in her throat. They moved it. Marcus must have told Reddington, and he moved it. His office, Hawk said suddenly. If he moved it, it's in his office. He wouldn't risk taking it home, not if he thinks someone might be watching him. They crept down the hallway to Reddington's office. The door was locked, but Hawk pulled out a thin piece of metal, a lock pick, and worked it into the mechanism. 15 seconds later, the lock clicked open. The office was small and cramped, dominated by a large desk and 3 computer monitors. Filing cabinets lined one wall. Hawk went straight to the desk drawers while Mara checked the cabinets. Here, Hawk lifted the ledger from the bottom desk drawer. Got it. A car door slammed outside. They both froze. Footsteps in the parking lot, coming toward the building. Keys jangling. Then the unmistakable sound of the front door being unlocked. Back door, Mara hissed. We can still. No time. He's between us and the back. Hawk shoved the ledger inside his jacket and looked around frantically. Bathroom. Now. They ran silently down the hallway and into the small employee bathroom, closing the door just as the front lights flickered on. Through the crack at the bottom of the door, they saw hallway lights illuminating. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Mara recognized Reddington's voice immediately. Don't care what time it is. If she saw the ledger, we need to move tonight. Everything. Clean out the office, scrub the cameras, and deal with the girl. Marcus's voice already sent Tony to her apartment. If she's there, it's done. Mara's blood turned to ice. If she'd gone home. And if she's not there? Reddington asked. Then she's running, which means she's guilty. We'll find her. What about the cop? What cop? The biker. The one from the other night. Reddington's voice was tight with paranoia. I ran his plate. Bike's registered to a Michael Hawkins. Former detective, quit 8 months ago. He's been tracking me. Silence. Then Marcus, you're just telling us this now? I needed to be sure. I thought maybe he was just. A cop doesn't quit his job and follow you for 8 months because he's bored. Garrett. Marcus's voice was cold. Where's the ledger? My desk. Bottom drawer. Footsteps moving toward the office. Toward the desk where they'd just been standing. A pause that stretched for eternity. Then, it's gone. What? The ledger. It's not here. That's impossible, I put it there 2 hours ago after Marcus called. Well, it's not here now. Marcus's voice turned deadly. Which means someone was just in this building. Which means. A phone rang. Tony's voice came through on speaker. She's not at the apartment. Place is empty. And there's a motorcycle parked 2 streets from the diner. Harley Davidson. License matches the cop. Marcus swore viciously. They're here. Still in the building. Find them. Mara grabbed Hawk's arm, her eyes wide with terror. They were trapped. No back door exit without the alarm. No front door without running straight into Reddington and Marcus. Hawk's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone and typed quickly, showing her the screen. Detective Chen, sending location and evidence now. Officers needed immediately. Multiple suspects, armed and dangerous. He hit send. Then he whispered in her ear, when I go out there, you run for the front door. Don't stop. Don't look back. What? No. But Hawk was already moving, pushing open the bathroom door. Looking for me, Garrett? His voice rang out in the hallway. Then everything exploded into chaos. Hawk stepped into the hallway, hands visible, the ledger tucked inside his jacket. Reddington and Marcus spun toward him. Marcus's hand moved to his waistband, toward a gun, Mara realized with sickening clarity. I wouldn't, Hawk said calmly. I just sent photos of every page in that ledger to the state police. Detectives are already on their way. You pull that weapon, you're adding another charge to a very long list. You're bluffing, Marcus said, but his hand hesitated. Try me. Reddington's face had gone pale. Where's the girl? Safe. Away from here. Away from you. It was a lie. Mara was still pressed against the bathroom wall, barely breathing, but Reddington believed it. She watched through the crack in the door as his expression shifted from anger to calculation. We can work this out, Reddington said, his voice taking on a smooth, reasonable tone. Whatever you think you know, whatever you think that ledger proves. It proves you've been trafficking women for 3 years. It proves Jessica Tanner, Caroline Voss, and 5 others disappeared under your watch. It proves you were paid for them. Hawk's voice was hard as iron. Your only choice now is whether you go quietly or make this worse. Marcus moved fast, faster than Mara expected for a man his size. He lunged at Hawk, gun clearing his waistband. Hawk was faster. He sidestepped, caught Marcus's wrist, and twisted. The gun clattered to the floor. Marcus threw a punch with his free hand, connecting with Hawk's jaw. Hawk staggered but didn't go down. He drove his elbow into Marcus's solar plexus, and the bigger man doubled over. Reddington ran, not toward them, but toward his office. Mara saw her chance. She burst from the bathroom and sprinted for the front door. Behind her, she heard Marcus roaring, heard the sounds of fighting, heard Hawk shout, "Go! Run!" She hit the front door at full speed. It was still unlocked from when they'd entered. She crashed through it into the parking lot, gasping for air, legs pumping. A car engine roared to life. Reddington's black Cadillac screeched out of its parking space, heading for the exit. He'd gone through the office window, Mara realized. He was escaping. She stood frozen in the parking lot, watching the taillights disappear down the street. Behind her, the diner door slammed open. Hawk stumbled out, breathing hard, blood trickling from his split lip. Marcus was on the floor inside, not moving but alive. She could see his chest rising and falling. He's running, Mara gasped. Hawk was already moving toward his motorcycle. Stay here. Police are coming. Tell them everything. Where are you going? To make sure he doesn't disappear, Hawk threw his leg over the Harley and kicked it to life. The ledger's inside, on the counter by the register. Give it to Detective Chen. Nobody else. Hawk. But he was gone, the motorcycle roaring into the night, chasing Reddington's taillights. Mara stood alone in the parking lot, her whole body shaking. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Red and blue lights appeared at the end of the street. 3 police cars pulled into the parking lot, followed by 2 unmarked sedans. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, shouting for her to raise her hands. She did, tears streaming down her face. A woman in a gray suit emerged from one of the sedans, Asian, 40s, sharp-eyed. Detective Chen. Mara? She asked, holstering her weapon. Mara nodded. Where's Hawkins? He went after Reddington. The ledger's inside. He said to give it only to you. Detective Chen motioned to 2 officers. Secure the building. 1 suspect down inside. Another fled in a black Cadillac, heading east on Morrison. All units, suspect is Garrett Reddington, white male, 50s, considered dangerous. She turned back to Mara. I need you to tell me everything. Can you do that? Mara nodded again and began talking. She told them about the storage room, the ledger, the names. About Marcus and Tony. About Reddington's threats. About how Hawk had been investigating for months. The words poured out of her in a rush, months of fear and silence breaking like a dam. More police arrived. The diner became a crime scene, cordoned off with yellow tape. Officers photographed everything. Paramedics checked Mara for injuries, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Marcus was arrested, conscious but silent, demanding a lawyer. An hour passed. Then 2. Dawn began to break over the parking lot. Finally, a radio crackled. Suspect vehicle located at abandoned bus depot on Route 47. 2 suspects in custody. Detective Hawkins requesting your presence, Detective Chen. Chen looked at Mara. You want to see how this ends? Mara thought about Jessica and Caroline and 5 other girls. Girls who never got justice. Yes, she said. They drove to the depot together, the city waking up around them. The sun painted everything gold and new, and for the first time in weeks, Mara felt like she could breathe. The abandoned bus depot sat on the edge of town, a relic from decades past when public transportation had been more ambitious. Now it was just crumbling concrete and rusted metal, surrounded by overgrown weeds and chain-link fence. 4 police cars blocked the entrance. Officers stood with weapons drawn, forming a perimeter. In the center of it all, Garrett Reddington sat in the back of a patrol car, hands cuffed behind his back, his face ashen. Beside another cruiser stood a second man Mara had never seen before, thin, nervous, mid-60s with wire-rimmed glasses. He was talking rapidly to an officer, gesturing with his cuffed hands. Hawk leaned against his motorcycle, watching it all. His knuckles were bloody, his jacket torn at the shoulder, but he stood straight. When he saw Detective Chen's sedan pull up, something in his posture relaxed. Mara got out of the car slowly, her legs unsteady. That's him, Detective Chen said, nodding toward the nervous man. Daniel Kovac. He's the broker. The one who connects suppliers like Reddington to buyers across state lines. He's already asking for a deal. Will you give him one? Depends on what he gives us, Chen's voice was hard. But based on what Hawkins just told me, Kovac's been running this operation for 5 years. Reddington's just one of a dozen managers he's worked with. This is bigger than we thought. Mara felt sick. How many girls? How many diners and bars and restaurants? Detective Chen walked toward the officers coordinating the scene, leaving Mara standing alone. After a moment, she crossed to where Hawk waited. You okay? He asked. You're asking me? She gestured at his split lip, his bloody knuckles. You're the one who fought Marcus. I've had worse. He pulled the ledger from inside his jacket, somehow it had survived everything, and held it out to her. You should give this to Chen yourself. It's your evidence. Your courage that got it. Mara took the ledger, feeling its weight. All those names. All those lives. What happens now? She asked. Chen's team will work the case. The ledger gives them names, locations, money trails. They'll find the girls if any of them can still be found. They'll build cases against everyone involved. Hawk glanced at Reddington sitting in the patrol car. He's done. Marcus, Tony, Kovac, they're all done. And you? He was quiet for a moment. I'm not a cop anymore. This was personal. Now it's over. Jessica and Caroline, were they personal? Caroline was. I worked her case. Found her body. His jaw tightened. I couldn't help her. But maybe I helped you. Maybe that's enough. Across the lot, Detective Chen was waving Mara over. I should go, Mara said. Hawk nodded. Hey, Mara. She turned back. You did good. Really good. A lot of people would have stayed quiet, kept their heads down. You didn't. I was terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when you're terrified. He offered a small, genuine smile. You saved yourself. I just made sure you got the chance. Mara felt tears prickling her eyes. Thank you. For watching. For caring when nobody else did. Someone should have cared sooner. She walked across the lot to where Detective Chen waited with the other officers. She handed over the ledger, made another statement, answered more questions. As the sun climbed higher, more vehicles arrived, federal agents, district attorneys, crime scene investigators. The machine of justice ground slowly into motion. 3 weeks later, Mara stood on the courthouse steps, blinking in the afternoon sunlight. Inside, she'd just finished her testimony before a grand jury. Her voice had shaken at first, but as she'd told her story, all of it, she'd felt something shift inside her. Not the fear leaving, but something else growing alongside it. Strength. Agency. The knowledge that her words mattered. The grand jury had indicted Reddington, Marcus, Tony, and Kovac on 43 counts including human trafficking, kidnapping, conspiracy, and 7 counts of murder. 3 of the missing girls had been found alive, held in locations across 2 states. 4 were still missing, but the investigation continued. Mara walked down the steps, exhausted but lighter than she'd felt in months. A familiar motorcycle was parked at the curb. Hawk sat astride it, arms crossed, watching the courthouse. When he saw her, he straightened. Thought you might want a friendly face, he said as she approached. I thought you said it was over. It is. I've been consulting on a few other cases Chen's team is investigating. Turns out former detectives have uses. He studied her face. How'd it go? Hard. But good. They believed me. Of course they did. You told the truth. Mara wrapped her arms around herself. What do I do now? I can't go back to waitressing. I can't. You do whatever you want. That's the whole point. Hawk pulled an envelope from his jacket. Chen wanted me to give you this. Victims Assistance Fund information. Resources. Counseling. And there's a reward for information leading to arrests in trafficking cases. Should be enough to cover your mom's bills for a while. Give you time to figure things out. Mara took the envelope, her throat tight. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Thank yourself for being brave enough to make the call. He started his motorcycle, the engine rumbling to life. Take care of yourself, Mara Chen. You're stronger than you think. Will I see you again? Hawk smiled, a real smile this time, reaching his eyes. Maybe. If you need me. But I don't think you will. He pulled away from the curb, merging into traffic, disappearing into the flow of the city. Mara stood on the courthouse steps, the envelope in her hands, the sun warm on her face. For the first time in longer than she could remember, the future didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something she could build. She walked down the steps and into her new beginning.